I won't be in class today, obviously. But you are still watching this video to take the notes. So once you're done with the notes, you're gonna show it to the sub, and then they're gonna give you the homework assignment. So we're only doing target B notes day 1. Today's notes are pretty easy. All right, so we're gonna be talking about radicals. Okay, so we talked about exponents already. Now we're gonna talk about radicals. Okay, so let me get my pen so I could draw in here. Oh, there you go. All right, so it says a square root or a radical. So a square root symbol can also be called a radical. Okay, so the first example that we see is that's the square root of x. All right, and remember square, you should know that square means 2. So even though we don't have a number 2 right here in the radical, there's an imaginary 2 in there. I'm always gonna know that whenever I see a radical like this, there's an imaginary 2 right there. Okay, I don't have to always write it. I should already know, so you should already know that. Okay, so square root of x, and it could also be called radical of x. And I'm usually going to be talking about this as radical. So I'm always going to be explaining, instead of saying square root, I'm going to be talking about the radical. Okay. There's always fancy names for the square roots. So for example, when I have a number 3 on the square root, then it's not a square root anymore. It's going to be a cube root, because we're talking about 3. All right. And well, I call it the third root. Right. So a radical is like a root, which you know is this little symbol right here. So it says after 3 there are no more fancy names. So after 3, I'm just going to call this, for example, I'm just going to call this the fifth rule, right? The fifth rule, because there's no fancy names after that. Okay, so the numbers increase, and it's just going to be the sixth root, the seventh root, whatever the number is with the root at the end. Okay, so before we get started on the notes, notice how before we get started, it says rewrite the following expressions using a radical exponent. So they gave you the form in radical. You need to write it as exponents. That's from target 8. All right, something I gotta tell you is that you're always gonna have a number right here, and you're always gonna have a base. So I'm gonna put B for base, and you're always gonna have a number, okay, an exponent number next to your base, next to or outside the base. Okay, what you need to realize is that obviously the base stays the same, right? And now you're gonna write an exponent, and it's an exponent, and your n is gonna be in the bottom, your m is gonna be on top. Every time you have an exponent of a fraction, you're gonna be able to switch it to a radical. Okay, and again, you have a radical, you can switch it to an exponent. Okay, and because it's in the radical, it's going to be an exponent of a fraction. All right, so keep that in mind. So to rewrite the following expressions, as you can see, the number is, your base are in parentheses. Okay, so that means that they stick together. So it's going to be 5x parentheses, because they're sticking together. And again, I have this 3. This 3 goes on the bottom, so it's going to be 3. I don't have a number outside as an exponent, but I know there's an imaginary 1. So there's going to be 1/3. And again, I told you, since it's in the radical, it has to be a fraction. Okay, so it has to switch to a fraction. You cannot just leave a 3 by itself. So the same thing for 7xy. They're together. This is the base. The base is the same. The fraction is going to be, I told you, there's no number here, and it's an imaginary 2, so this goes on the bottom. The 5 comes on top, so it's going to be 5/2. And that's all we're doing. We're switching the radicals to rational exponents. All right, so 11n parentheses. This goes on the bottom. This goes on top. Same thing for number 4. 3A, 3 on the bottom, 4 on top, and don't forget my parentheses. Alright, the last one, my base is A, B, C, parentheses. My fraction is going to be 4 over 5. And the last one, 13y, fraction, 7 over 5. Alright, pretty easy. We're not doing any math yet. All we're doing is switching between radicals to exponents. Alright, now we're going to do the opposite. We're going to rewrite a exponential equation or expression in radical. Now we're switching to a radical. And again, remember the little keynote that I told you. And the radical is base and m, which is going to be base and an m. Okay. So notice how we have only one base. So you could write 7, the radical. What's it switching? Alright, so 7 and the radical is inside the radical. And the number on the bottom goes on the number on your radical. I call it a little house. Inside the house. See that? So it's inside the little house is 5. And make sure we write it carefully inside. And the 3 goes next to 7. Okay, notice this is now in parentheses, so the 3 goes next to 7. Alright, 5, again, the radical, 3 goes inside the house. And then next to 5 is going to be an exponent of 2. Next, we got 11, the radical of 7 and 5. Next, radical of 3, 4, and 3. Alright, next. The next ones are in parentheses. That means that they stick together. And you notice from number 7 to 10, there was only one base. So it didn't really matter. But now we're talking about two different bases. And it's in parentheses, okay? That means that they both are going to be in the radical. So 7a, parentheses. And 3 goes inside. The 4 goes outside now. Same thing with the next one, the radical. Base stays the same. The 2 goes inside. I don't have to write the 2. And I have a 1 outside, so I don't have to write it. So that's my final answer. Remember, I don't have to write these numbers. Okay? You already know that this is a 2 and this is a 1. Alright? So try number 13 and 14. Once you try 13 and 14, your answer for 13 should have been 2xy, the radical, close parentheses, and 3. The next one is 5p, radical, close parentheses, 3 over 5. Alright, and that's the notes for Target B Day 1. Pretty easy, okay? Once you're done with the notes, the sub is going to give you the homework. And we'll continue with Day 2 notes tomorrow. Make sure to turn in the homework from last night. All right. Have a nice day.